Good morning and welcome to the stage, GARE Senior Director, Marcia Guthrie.
Good morning. All right, remember the South has something to say. If you were with us last night, one of the things that I know we say in the South is good morning. Good morning and welcome to Dallas. We are so delighted that you have chosen to be with us. As our beautiful voice of God says, my name is Marcia Guthrie and I'm honored to serve as the Senior Director at the Government Alliance on Race and Equity. And this morning, I proudly extend a welcome to you all on behalf of Race 4 as we gather for GARE's Governing for Racial Justice 2024 Southern Regional Meeting. It is my pleasure to provide remarks this morning for what I know and I am confident will be an extraordinary gathering of minds. Today we come with a deep sense of purpose and a steadfast dedication to our shared values, fully acknowledging the significance of place and context. Our presence in Dallas is intentional. This city is actively engaging in efforts to confront and reconcile its historical racial injustices, prioritizing a rebuilding process in collaboration with its community, crafting forward-thinking policies to ensure lasting transformation. We should be proud to be in Dallas for the next 2 days. We are convened to address a topic of critical importance, one that lies at the very heart of our pursuit for a more equitable and just society. Reclaiming and driving racial justice in the South, particularly in an environment where backlash and attacks on racial equity work, specifically in government, have become increasingly prevalent. Like many of you, I have chosen to make the South the place that I live and raise my family. And I'm in the deep South, Florida South. We are here as folks across the South, standing in unity for the reclamation of our region. This is our region. We are here because we recognize that the work of racial equity is not the responsibility of a few, but the mandate for all who envision a society where justice is not a privilege, but a right accessible to everyone. This convening is a testament to our shared belief in the power of collective action and our refusal to be silenced or deterred by those who oppose our vision. Did we say last night that the South has something to say? Yes, we did. As we gather at this pivotal moment, we stand united, those of us who have chosen to heed the call to transform our government so it may realize its highest ideals and work for the benefit of all. This juncture reminds us of the journey we must all undertake, a journey that demands courage, will, unparalleled creativity, and even a touch of finesse. Got your gear green on, I see y'all looking beautiful. You already got the finesse down pat. As racial equity practitioners in government, we are here to explore innovative ways to apply adaptive leadership and creative solutions. Our goal is to transform the South's image from one often shadowed by negative stereotypes to a vision of progress and inclusion. Our stories will be celebrated as we come together over the next 2 days. These narratives will empower us to forge a new story of the Southern Americas, one that honors our shared efforts and aspirations for racial equity and justice. Much of this meeting will be focused on sharpening the fundamentals necessary for innovation to thrive. This has been the focus of GARE's inaugural innovation community, bringing together racial equity practitioners in the South. We recognize that innovating for racial equity in the South represents a collective undertaking and requires creativity, commitment, and collaboration. As we embark on these critical discussions while here in Dallas, let us do so with open hearts and minds, ready to listen, learn, and partner. Let us be propelled by the knowledge that the path towards racial justice, though fraught with obstacles, is noble and righteous. To our speakers, panelists, we extend our deepest gratitude for lending your expertise, insights, and passion to this convening. To our participants, your presence here is a reflection of your commitment to the cause of racial justice and equity. Together we represent a powerful force for change. So in closing, let us remember that the work of reclaiming the South and driving racial justice, and indeed across our nation, is a continuous journey. It is a journey made richer and more meaningful when we walk it together. As the great civil rights activist and pioneer Grace Lee Boggs said, "You make your path by walking." Creativity is the key to human liberation. Let this convening serve as a beacon of hope and a call to action as we strive to build a future where racial justice and equity is realities for all. Thank you, and let's all anticipate a meeting that's both productive and uplifting. Let's carry the message that the South will stand tall and stand proud. I encourage you to share your experiences and insights on social media during our meeting with the hashtag GSRM24, hashtag South Stand Up, amplifying our collective voice. Thank you. Now please join me in extending a warm welcome to Carolyn King Arnold, Deputy Mayor Pro Tem, City Council District 4 in Dallas. In June 2023, she was honored with the designation of Deputy Mayor Pro Tem, marking another milestone in her distinguished career. Prior to this, in June 2022, she broke new ground as the first African-American woman in Dallas to hold the position as Mayor Pro Tem. My own journey resonates with the theme of pioneering leadership as I stand before you today as the first Black woman to lead the Government Alliance on Race and Equity.
Thank you and good morning. Thank you, Ms. Marcia. I believe Ms. Marcia said good morning in the South. We say good morning, and as Tyler Perry has taught us to say good morning. Good morning, bienvenidos, and this bonus. We used to have a joke about my principal when we worked with her on her Spanish. She would always say "Buenos dias." We would always crack up because we knew she had a long way to go in her training. So good morning, and we hope you have a great day and have had a great morning. It is an honor more than anything to be here, and an honor to have been invited. You know, not everyone is invited. Would you agree? Not everyone can come to the party. Not everyone can participate in the conversation. And so you are here this morning for a reason. You have been called. Some of you have chosen the opportunity to be here in Big D. Some of you probably decided to sign up because it was not only good training, but it gave you an opportunity to get away from the day-to-day demands. But what I can tell you is that I do have a script, I want to say that. And for those who are from Dallas, they know that I'm here in Dallas because I couldn't do well in Hollywood. I don't follow scripts well, so I couldn't get a job there. But we hope that this morning I will do as the committee has asked me to do, is to stay on script. But I have to continue to underscore my honor to be here with you this morning. It is a privilege to be here to share some words to you today as you journey through this path that we now call racial justice. Unfortunately, but fortunately, the struggle continues. We are visiting some of the same themes that Dr. King and others before him had to visit and had to fight for. And so what I will tell you before I go into a little bit of what I want to really say, I will tell you that this event is a very important step in advancing and staying on course, that terminology that we have coined as racial equity. Racial equity is a topic that you should not take lightly. We know the impact, and if you don't know the impact, I'm going to continue to encourage you to keep researching, keep studying, keep learning, because this topic is not something that you can just download off an app and know all about it in one day. It is not. This particular systemic illness has impacted Black, brown, and white communities. And I know oftentimes we say Black and brown, but there are some stories that white counterparts can share with you as well. But it's easier sometimes to pass. It's difficult for African Americans, or Black and brown, sometimes to what we call pass. And if that's a lesson, if you don't understand what we mean by passing, I'm going to give that assignment to you today. And so, as we talk about Black, brown, lower income communities, we know it's important that we begin to normalize this topic. You know, there are some people, and I'm getting off a little bit, when we talk about equity, they are totally confused. It's difficult for them to pronounce the word. It's difficult when we talk about equity, and we talk about Black, brown, white communities. There are folks whose blood pressure begins to rise when they say the word, or hear the word Black, white, brown. So we have to normalize this. This is reality. This is a reality show. It's reality. And so as we move forward to make sure that we normalize this topic of equity as a component to consider the unique circumstances and histories, as well as different experiences that communities have with systems and institutions because of historic practices and current disparities. Yet, talking about it is not enough. I think I heard Ms. Marshall mention that. In lieu of talking the talk, you must move toward action. Words sound real good, but if there's no action, there's no momentum, then they're just what? Words. So action means moving your policies forward and then making the decisions once the policy has been put in place to fund it and make the intentional investment where it needs to be. You have to be targeted. You have to be intentional. It cannot be simply about words, being cute, sounding good, making that impression for today. And I know that staff has asked me today, and they hear me talk about some of my colleagues, and even some staff members who speak well, they write well, and most of us in here have paid dearly for our education, and some of us are still in debt behind those courses that we enrolled in, and those courses where our professors taught us how to put sentences together, and how to speak well, and how to research. But as soon as the rubber meets the road, what happens oftentimes is we begin to back up. Back up, give me what? You remember that song? Give me 50 feet. We back up. And in one of my favorite entertainers, Michael Jackson, he said it well. He did it well. He did the moonwalk. And that's what so many of our co-workers will do. They will begin to moonwalk when you begin to talk about implementation of these policies. And so you have to what? Stay woke, so that you can identify those individuals who love Michael Jackson's movement so well that they imitate it every time we get to the point of equity, racial justice, implementation. And then some of them will go straight ghost on you. Straight ghost. So you have to make sure that when you come to the table, when you come to the dance, when you're invited to lunch, when you're at the program, you must stay focused. You must not be one of those educated, intellectual, racial justice hypocrites. And so I tell you today, as we stay on script, we know, those of us here Horseshoe. Equity to 1500 Marilla. Equity to 1500 Marilla. The same location where so many of these policies of exclusion were implemented. So it was a bold move. And please believe me, he has taken quite a few hits because of his strength to bring this conversation to Dallas and to hire individuals who would be willing not only to talk about it, but insist that it's implemented correctly. But the work is not done. I am confident that you, if you make up your mind, and if you're strong enough, and you're bold enough, the panels, the workshops, and tours that will offer perspectives surrounding the vital work you are charged with every day, you will begin to grow, you will begin to get stronger, and then you can model the behavior so those who come after you will not fear what is right. So I hope that you can all walk away enlightened, more educated, and with a better understanding of how we must work together. We know systemically, much of the harshness has been written in history that reflects injustices against these communities that I just described. Here in Dallas, we have a stronger history against African Americans and Hispanics. But what you must do, and what I think you must understand, because I understand, we cannot address racial equity in silos. When you go do your research, your real research, you're going to better understand the Rainbow Coalition, because it was not a fight that only blacks push forward. We must work together. And the other reason you must work together is if you do your research, and I hope you will do that today. Most of us in here, you probably don't want to hear this if you won't invite me next year. But all of us have a little somebody in all of us. There's no, I'm going to say this, we're not a pure anything. Look at our families. Most of the time when we go to family reunions, it looks like what? The United Nations. I can tell you mine surely look like that. And so we must speak on behalf of those who will come after us. That's the only way we're going to get where we're trying to get to. And so I will tell you this, with much excitement and conviction, I'm back to the script. As Deputy Mayor Pro Tem, former Mayor Pro Tem, historical perspective, as you mentioned, being the first African American woman in that position of Mayor Pro Tem. But it didn't come easy. Sometimes things happen because there are people behind the scenes working for you. And I can tell you that's what happened to me. Because of the system that we have in Dallas, and we have an African American mayor, the way the unwritten policy is that there has to be a coalition in terms of race, ethnicity, whatever the mayor is, that his sidekicks have to be of a different flavor. And so I knew that the conversation, folks get all excited because everybody wants to be important. But my thing was about leadership. And if I knew that I could handle the job, and I shared that with folks who were worried about trying to get votes for that. Whatever it is, it's going to be. But I know God put me in that position for a reason. It was not just man. And I can tell you, I was not out lobbying for that position. But I can tell you I deserve that position. I don't know if you know this either, but you may have to go research this too. You need to know the difference between a token and a leader. I can't be a token. I'm not trying to be a token. And you shouldn't either. So do your research and make sure you understand. I know I'm the only African American woman right now on the horseshoe. I'm not excited about that. I know there's work to be done. Have there been other African American women on the council? Yes. But because I am the only one, I am not celebrating being black. It's about an experience and understanding. But there's some things, because of your cultural background, you can bring to the table that folks don't understand it. But once they get with you, and I'm still working on a few folks because I want them to understand what oxtails are. You know what I'm saying? You have to bring some people to the table. Some people understand menudo better than others. But you bring them to the table so they can understand. And so, polenta is another experience. Some folks call it polenta, other people call it what? Grits. So we have, you need to get, I'm going to give you your assignment today before I leave out of here. Now, to get back on script so I can get you on time. So, the city of Dallas, we continue to make equitable strides forward, but once again, we have to stay woke because there's something determined to take us backwards. With this $3 billion budget, $3 billion budget with a $1 billion bond, we have more money that we're accumulating and putting on paper. But even though we understand, or maybe we don't understand that money is put into that pot by people who spend money in the state of Texas, in the city of Dallas, people who pay property taxes, people whose children will have to pay the debt when they've gone on. But guess what? All of us don't participate in the services because once decisions are made to backtrack, to moonwalk. And so I tell you, yes, we have a lot of work to do. But what part of your assignment is this. You will need to understand the importance of looking at Lady Justice. In some of our textbooks, Lady Justice has on the what? A blindfold. Some don't have a blindfold. And so you have to really understand what is the true significance of the blindfold. Some would say because justice should be what? Blind and fair. But I tell you, over recent years, I believe Lady Justice, this is my opinion, has begun to peak. She raised in that room, blindfold up, because of the decisions that we see rolling out of some of our jurisdictions. Look at Austin, Texas, the governor who's now saying, get rid of DEI. We don't, basically what he's saying is we're rolling the wheels back. Bring Jim Crow back to the table. So you need to do your homework. This is a difficult fight. Because when you begin to move into communities of which you were not born into, people begin to throw darts at you. They're going to begin to call you all types of names. This is not a movie. It's reality. And so thank you. I think I'm almost back to the script now. Thank you as you continue to address decades-old problems that once again require intentional action and investments to address the disparities, the disconnect, disenfranchisement. We know they exist. We know every council district has a need for racial justice. They have a need for a person who sits in that horseshoe to fight. And I know that by us doing this together, whether you're in Texas or wherever, whichever state you're in, I know that you're here today because you share the same thing that we have in Dallas. But it takes us together to work it. But you first have to realize it. You have to explore it in order to accept it. This is not a movie. This is not make-believe. And so together we can do it better. I thank you so very much for allowing me to be here this morning with you. But please understand, I did not take this invitation lightly. It was an honor to be here. And so with that being said, I hope that you have a great day today. I hope you will take your assignment seriously. You must take time to research, to learn, to know. so that as you get older, you'll be and more wiser, you will be strong enough and know what you need to do so that you can take care of people my age and older. All right? Thank you so very much.
Please join me in welcoming to the stage Lorraine Guerrero, founder of Indigenous Arts, Culture, and Education, for our land acknowledgement.
Is that the only time? Yeah.
Let us pause for a moment to acknowledge all Native American peoples who have lived on this land since time immemorial. GARE especially acknowledges the Caddo, the Wichita, and the
I have just a
Kikuyu
microphone
tribes,
for you because
who are the
they get
original
like a chair
stewards
here
of the
or
land
something.
now known as Dallas, Texas.
Texas.
Biwo, Napepe, Lorraine Guerrero, Nkelekewa, Mima, Isa, and Ede. Mima, Jokiwe, what I said in my native tongue is, hello, good day. I'm called Lorraine Guerrero. I'm an enrolled member of the Holocaust people and also Apache. And I just commend GARE for inviting me to be part of this this event by doing the land acknowledgement. And full disclosure, this is my first land acknowledgement. I've never participated in them, I've never really been involved in them because I've never really agreed with them. Because most of the land acknowledgements that I've seen and witnessed have been read by non-indigenous people.
Yeah, we're gonna take this
I
whole
commend GARE for actually having a native person here to give this acknowledgement. The other reason that I've never really been involved in participating in these land acknowledgements is because this is where it stops. Everyone that I've been to, they read the script like I just did, and that's it. And half the time, people aren't even paying attention. So GARE asked, and part of the discussion that was had prior to me agreeing to do this, was that I said, and they agreed, is let's go deeper into this. What do we do after the land acknowledgement? And I just kind of want to expound upon that a little bit. By first of all saying, all of you all that are here, you represent your organizations, your businesses, your government agencies. How many of y'all have an Indigenous or Native American person employed on your company? I see very few hands, right? That's not something that is common. And so what I like to say is, out of sight, out of mind. So we should have a place at the table. Indigenous people, there's so many several misconceptions about, excuse me, us as Indigenous people is that we're uneducated or we come from poor areas. We don't have, we can't get and assimilate to society. Well, I will tell you, I have a bachelor's degree in forensic science. I'm the Deputy Chief Field Agent of Collin County Medical Examiner. I'm the Presentations Coordinator for the Indigenous Cultures Institute. I sit on the Board of Trustees for Texas Native Health, and I'm the founder and CEO of Indigenous Health. So, your stereotypes or the stereotypes about us have just been broken. So we are educated and we do deserve a place at the table. And I say out of sight, out of mind, because if you don't have someone that's Indigenous in your company, in your business, part of your DE&I, then how are you to learn about what our vibrant culture, what we have contributed to this country, this society? How many of y'all know that the Constitution that we follow is founded on Haudenosaunee law? Exactly. It's not known. That's something that should be celebrated, is that the government that we established, democracy is an Indigenous concept. Because all of you all that know, and you know your history, that was why the settlers came over here, because they came from England, which was not a democratic society. That's what we had here before there was the United States. And so, I just implore you to start seeking out Indigenous voice. With that being said, I'm actually looking, and if anyone's hiring, I'm trying to get into the field because I believe that we do need to have a voice. Also with that being said, how many of you all identify as Latino or Hispanic? Ooh, that's a lot of hands. Do you realize that you're indigenous? It's time to take back our culture. We have lost a lot due to the colonial mindset, the colonial teaching that was taken away from us. There are a lot of customs that us as Latino people or people that are Latino or Hispanic need to re-embrace and practice. So those of y'all that said you did not have or didn't raise your hand having an indigenous employee, you actually did. Some of you, if you have a Latino person, we just need to re-educate ourselves. And we have a lot to bring to the table. So, I just want to commend GARE once again. I don't want to take up too much of y'all's time. I know that we're a little bit behind, but thank you all for having us. And, just remember us, and we have a lot to teach. So thank you. And my language would say "pilo," which means thank you.
Thank you. Please join me in preparing for Michael Childs, who will be performing Lift Every Voice and Sing, the Negro National Anthem. Michael is an accomplished director, composer, playwright, choreographer, and actor. Welcome, Michael Childs. Apologize for the delay.
In the days when
Thank you, Michael. Please join me in welcoming to the stage for a roundtable conversation about operationalizing racial equity efforts across the city of Dallas. Lindsay Wilson, Director of the Office of Equity and Inclusion. Thor Erickson, Assistant Director of the Department of Housing and Neighborhood Revitalization. Danielle Thompson, Director of the Office of Procurement Services. Martine Philippe, Director of Arts and Culture. Jessica Galashaw, Director of Office of Community Care. And Rosa Fleming, Director of Tourism, Convention, and Events.
Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning. Now, wait a minute. I know Dallas can welcome you way better than that, so we're going to try this again. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. There we go, there we go. As mentioned, my name is Dr. Lindsay Wilson, and I am thrilled to bring the Dallas Showcase this morning, really centered around relationships and the critical work of advancing equity here in the city of Dallas. Prior to introducing the panel, I want to just take a moment and tell you a bit about Dallas. Dallas is the 9th largest city, the 5th largest tech force, home to over 10 Fortune 500 companies, diverse, with over 90 different languages spoken here in our city. Dallas consistently tops multiple lists as one of the fast-growing economies and best places to do business and to start a career. Yet, not all Dallas residents report the same experience. Disparities exist and disproportionately impact our residents by racial and ethnic lines at every stage of life. We know the federal highway construction and the ways in which infrastructure was used to segregate and destroy communities were at a significant cost to communities of color here in Dallas, like Freeman Towns. These infrastructure divisions in our city and cities throughout the country really created racial disparities that continue to impact residents today. Those of you who were able to join us last night for the impactful opening reception heard Reverend Dr. Haynes talk about the tale of two cities. And so as we enter the conversation this morning around the very intentional work that the city of Dallas, particularly across 4 different departments, are engaged in, we are hoping to share some key practices that have been beneficial, and most importantly, throughout the next 2 days, learn from each of you. With that being said, we wanted to have a roundtable discussion, so I'm going to join my colleagues here, and we're going to start with just some brief introductions, and it looks like, Rosa, you are ready with the mic. And so if you could just take a moment and introduce yourself, your department, and why equity is critical.
Okay, good morning. I'm Rosa Fleming, Director of Convention and Event Services for the City of Dallas. I am honored all the time to work in my position because I work in tourism and hospitality, and it's one of the careers you can have where you can start at the bottom, you can start as a janitor, you can start in a kitchen, and you can actually one day become a general manager of a hotel, making upwards of $200,000 a year. It's a career that doesn't always require a degree. It requires experience and persistence one of the things that I've learned in my job is that access is the thing that is the most important, because as I sat around my first meeting 4.5 years ago, no one in the room looked like me. And there was only one other female. She didn't look like me either. And so my first call of action to the hoteliers, to Visit Dallas, to others was to help us figure out how to change that. And 4.5 years in, that has changed. Several of the hotels have adopted programs that provide that access, because you can only rise from a janitor to a GM if someone lets you in. So that's why I do what I do.
Good morning, I'm Martina Luis-Philippe. I serve as the Director of the Office of Arts and Culture here in the city of Dallas, and I'm really grateful to work for such a large municipality. We have one of the oldest offices of arts and culture. We turned 35 this year in April. And essentially the mission and vision of our work is to improve quality of life through our lens. And as it relates to equity, I'm really grateful to work again for a municipality that is thoughtful enough to have a racial equity plan and a Dallas cultural plan. That's our policy and our marching orders for our office. And we are charged with ensuring that we are giving the resources that we have in an equitable manner to support our cultural arts ecosystem. Much like Rosa was mentioning, it's very rare to find us serving at this level, so we're really grateful again that we work for a municipality that is intentional about ensuring that women of color get to serve in these appointed roles, leading our respective offices and getting to prioritize folks who look like us, again, in our lanes. Really grateful.
Mike, check, 1, 2.
I'm good.
Okay, I was gonna,
Good morning, Danielle Thompson. I am the Director of the Office of Procurement Services. Procurement Services is really the center of contracts. What are contracts? Contracts are the documents that founded this nation, that are the transfer of wealth in this nation, of our laws, of our structure, of all of our institutions. They are built on contracts, on terms and conditions. And so procurement is extremely significant. We play a role really behind the scenes. But what drew me to procurement, contract management, is understanding the significance of the transfer of wealth. Contracts are a subject matter, an area that most minorities, number one, are not aware of, but we don't have the expertise to understand them. So with procurement, there's a phenomenal opportunity to bring education and awareness to what is in our contracts, understanding the significance of a contract, and then bringing resources to the people who are never at the table to get a contract. That has been the anchor of the work that I've been doing at the City of Dallas, which I'll get into, and also contract management. So once you get a contract, our small, minority, and local firms usually are not well vested in understanding what these 100 pages of contracts actually mean for their firm. So they are grateful to get the opportunity, but when they get the opportunity, a lot of the terms and conditions, the language, are not set up for their success. And so bringing awareness, bringing transparency to the work that we're doing at the City of Dallas is one of the great reasons why I feel so honored to serve here at the city.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Thor Erickson. I'm Assistant Director of the Department of Housing and Neighborhood Revitalization. The Housing Department is primarily created to invest in the production and preservation of affordable housing in the city. So our work means that we're helping developers produce affordable homes, we're working with homeowners to do home repair, and we're working with home buyers to purchase homes. That's our sole mission. And we've done that for decades. Something that we'll get into later is that we're starting to use data more. We conducted a racial equity audit of our last housing policy to understand the benefits and burdens of our programs, and that we are actually working on taking those lessons and findings and changing the way we do work. So what we do is not anything different than what we've really been doing in the past in terms of going out and finding development deals. But what is different is where we do work and why we do work in those places. And it's all fundamentally based upon the South of 30, understanding of our city, the historical disinvestment in our city, and our need to understand and recognize the market and the investors and what they do to neighborhoods is very detrimental to many people's lives. And if we can really understand and work with that and build policies and programs around that, we have a chance to save some really great places and build really great neighborhoods.
Thank you, Thor, and thank you to each of the panelists. I just want to take a moment and acknowledge the collaborative relationships that each of you have with the Office of Equity and Inclusion. It is a Wednesday, so today is City Council, and it's the first budget workshop. So in itself, it speaks to the commitment that each one of these leaders demonstrate as it regards to equity in their spaces. I also want to just take a moment to acknowledge Jessica Galashaw. She actually was not feeling good this morning, but is a huge advocate for equity and advancing it in her space. Thor, I'm going to start with you. As many of you probably see in your cities, housing remains a vital topic when we're talking about advancing racial equity. And addressing the disparities that we know exist not only in the home ownership gap, but also securing stable housing. Are you able to speak to us, Thor, about the fundamental work that your department has engaged in over the last few years to address racial disparities here in Dallas?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Wilson. Understanding who we serve is really the first step, or who we have historically served. We look at our different programs and primarily looking at home ownership. I can tell you 10 years ago, the median sales price of a home from someone buying a new home was less than $100,000. And last year it was $283,000. So in just 10 years, the average cost of a home is about triple in the city of Dallas. One of the things that we've always had is a home buyer assistance program. We used to offer up to $5,000 or $10,000 in assistance. But then when the home started to be above $200,000, a family could not qualify to buy those homes. And so we had to lift up the amount of home buyer assistance that we can provide. And we have to acknowledge that areas that are high opportunity or are more wealthy in the area, the home prices are going to be even more expensive. And so we've been able to create ways that our policy can fund even more in those areas. Last year was really exciting, and then through the racial equity budget, we actually had money to create that program, but focus on residents who might be leaving Dallas and create an anti-displacement, or what we like to call, a pro-Dallas type of program. So people who had a cumulative history of 10 years living in the city would qualify saying that they want to call Dallas their home. And primarily, these funds are used when we have our land bank or land transfer lots that were sold to developers to build affordable homes on. And those primarily happen in the southern sector. And our city is pretty segregated racially, ethnically, and income-wise. So our home buyers are primarily Hispanic home buyers. The second group are Black home buyers, and then followed by white. And we are a majority Hispanic city. So that data sort of falls in line with who are buying homes and taking advantage of that program. But then I look at my home repair programs, and the primary folks I'm serving are seniors, primarily Black homeowners over the age of 67, and primarily in the southern sector. And what we see there, those homes that are 50, 60 years old are starting to fall into some disrepair. And that's because as seniors go on fixed income, there's less and less money dedicated to preserving their housing. And so if we can come in and help preserve that and keep the homeowners living there, then we can start to create a way that we can keep communities alive. But I'll tell you that our data shows us that some of the census blocks in our southern sector have investors buying homes from homeowners. Between 13 and 60% of all home sales last year went to investors. So I have some neighborhoods where 60% of all home sales went to investors and not homeowner to homeowner. control. And so that starts to show where neighborhoods are at risk of displacement. And when displacement happens, then we have a whole slew of things that could happen to that family. There's a chance of falling into homelessness. There's a big probability that they're moving out of Dallas because housing costs might be cheaper. They might be moving in with family and doubling up, causing extra strain on housing. And so as we look at who we're serving and understand that we're serving primarily people of color who are seniors, we really have to understand that our programs are very directly tied to their livelihood, to their generation, to that asset, to that family's, the next family who might take ownership of that property. One of the other things we've been looking at is heirship and making sure that assets are transferred properly when we talk about contracts, making sure that those families understand exemptions that are possible, making sure that titles are clear, and having some services dedicated to help homeowners who have clear or unclear titles so that they can get some legal assistance they need in order to be able to apply for our programs. Because we can't serve somebody if you can't prove you own your home. I can't just come to your house and work on your home and hope you own it. And I can't let you sell your property if you don't own it, right? So one of the things we have to work on is that heirship issue, which is very, very big in our city. And so that's some of the stuff that we've been doing.
Well, thank you for that. And I think a pivotal moment was the racial equity audit to the Dallas Comprehensive Housing Policy. Break down in a sentence or two. A sentence, right? Listen, curveballs coming. Everybody else get ready. But break down in a sentence or two what that actually means and potential takeaways for some of the practitioners as they're thinking about the collaboration that they have with their housing department.
Yeah, thank you. So, racial equity plan existed, and then we had champion council members who said we can do better for this. And Councilmember Thomas challenged and said, it's a good policy, it's comprehensive, but there's no policy, right? It's a list of programs. Tell us who you're serving, where you're serving, and what the policy direction should be. And he called for a racial equity audit of the comprehensive housing policy. And what that meant was to actually examine it and see who we were serving, who we weren't serving, and if our programs were set up to do everything. So it was really the first step for us in learning how to have a common vocabulary around equity, using an equity lens and actually understanding what that could be, and laying the foundation for all the work that we've been able to do this last 2 years.
Oh, that was good. So how many of your jurisdictions are you familiar with maybe having a housing comprehensive policy? Oh. Is it called something else sometimes? All right, well, let's move right along. Rosa, you are up next. And if we can just take a moment to give you your flowers for all of the historic moments that have happened within, your entire career, but most recently acknowledging the fact that first time in history, MWBE, specifically two African-American owned businesses, were awarded the prime construction contracts. So those are the roses. Let's give you some daisies as well, right? Also recognizing the fact that Dallas Wings professional women's basketball team is moving here to the city of Dallas at the convention. So thank you for all of the amazing work that you have done and continue to do. Break down to us what this actually means, why it's important, and just some key practices that practitioners should be thinking about as they're having conversations with their departments back at home.
Sure. So convention event services, like I said, is about tourism and hospitality. And when people looked at the convention center itself, when we started the master plan, they had traditionally looked at a building, right? And so in order for the convention center to work, it's the living room for our city, right? And so it includes collaboration with all the people here and a cadre of departments within the city. And no one ever looked at that before. And no one ever looked the convention center would have $600 million of deferred payments. That's $1 billion. That wasn't gonna move the convention center forward, it wasn't gonna do anything for the city. And so I went to council and I said, let's move it. They all looked at me like I was completely insane and probably should have been fired that day. And then they said, well, how are you gonna pay for it? And so my staff and I, with Dallas, the cadre of people, other departments, we dug deep, looked at legislation, and figured out there's this little part of the tax code that says that you can ask the state for the increment of their hotel-related taxes. And we were in the middle of COVID, so they weren't making anything, so the increment is the difference. And so we're making about $45 million a year in money that can be used for it, so well in the billions over 30 years that we can use to build a convention center, do some of the housing, do the procurement actions. And I say this all the time, no one does anything alone. You know, Danielle and I were holding hands, crying, screaming, yelling at people, trying to get, you know, the things done. But the takeaway is think out of the box, right? Stop doing things the same way all the time, because you'll get the same result. So look at it different, look at the things that are broken, and it's our job to figure out how to fix it.
Well, that's powerful in itself. I know it's early, but y'all can do better than that out there. That's powerful in itself. And one of the things that we heard yesterday from our keynote really is dream. Dream what equity can look like outside of what has happened. And so that is exactly what you were able to do. And now you're seeing some of the fruits of all of that labor. So thank you for that. You're also under a big expansion of the convention center, right? And it's slated to create over 50,000 new jobs. Can you shed some light on some of the equity goals that you have that really amplifies diversity of the hospitality industry and how it can close gaps?
Sure, so if you look at the data, like Thor was saying, data is important. One of the first things we did was look at where our hospitality workers in industry come from in Dallas. Southeast Dallas, South Dallas, West Dallas, the Vickery Meadow area of Dallas is predominantly where people have to figure out how to get downtown to work at in the positions they work in. Typically, you know, again, the positions I said before, the janitorial, the housekeeping, the front desk. And so the first thing we did was, okay, this project has to include connectivity. People have to not have to take 3 buses to get to work. They shouldn't have to pay $18 a day to park downtown. So those are some of the things we took in as goals and missions and visions and plan how we get people here. So it's not just looking at the convention center project as something that's for visitors, but you need a workforce that needs to be in there. And looking at partnering with like the RBCA, the Regional Black Contractors Association, which has programs that employ people who are just as impacted. You've got RHCA, the Regional Hispanic Contractors Association, does the same thing. So how do we build a workforce development programs around that? How do we do internship programs? We just launched the Tourism and Hospitality Internship Program, which acronym doesn't sound well, so we're working on that and we're taking all kinds of innovative advice. But we've just hired our first, we're piloting it, we've just hired our first 4 interns who will work 10 weeks doing a round robin at everywhere from Visit Dallas to a hotel to American Airlines Center, Convention Center, etc., so that they learn how the industry works, so that they can push those doors open. They're going to be degree people, they can push the door open, and then our call of action to them is pull somebody up behind you, right? And so they'll be making $19.50 an hour, well over a living wage, you know. So those are the things that we're trying to change. So again, it isn't just a building; it's looking at all the things from the worker, from the person who's going to build the building to the person who's going to program, manage the building, etc. So those are the things you have to look at and make sure that you're having the same equity goals for all of it. And it doesn't mean that if you're Anglo or something that you're missing anything. You're adding to it because everyone has a level of qualification that can fit in to something in hospitality and tourism.
I love it, and it really speaks to the importance of organizing, right, with key stakeholders, providing examples both internally across departments, but also externally with key stakeholders to really operationalize this work. So thank you for that example. I'm going to shift over to Danielle, and just kind of know one of the very first conversations that Danielle and I had as she entered as the director for the Office of Procurement. She was very clear that diversity and equity was her thing. That's what she was going to lead with. And so, speak to us a little bit about your philosophy around how that shows up in your daily decision-making processes and how you lead your team.
Thank you for the question. So we're at City Council. That's how we respond to City Council. Thank you for the question. Thank you for the question. So we're so my philosophy, if I can just be very transparent, my philosophy is a reflection of me. So representation. I have never met myself personally, and even in my career development, my educational background, a Black lead chief procurement officer who also led negotiations. I've never seen that. I didn't know that was a space that I had the opportunity to feel. And so for me, my philosophy comes from the reality of if I never seen it, I am changing that so that's not the norm. So what that looks like for me, again, is a lot of energy and investment in two things, people and process. So with people, understanding who we serve and who we are is very, very important. So when you look at contracts, data speaks, we're all talking about data. Our data tells us who we do business with. We do business with large firms. We do business with primarily non-minorities. And so when you look at that, the thought process should be, how do we diversify our supply chain and what is the business case? So you can't do this off of emotion. You can't do this off of preference. You have to make a business case for what you're doing, especially in procurement, because again, this is tied to contracts. So what we began to do the work of is understanding our processes and the people that our processes impacted. So for example, if we have a minimum requirement that a firm has to be able to bond $1 million to do XYZ work, we are quite literally removing an entire population of vendors who can do business with us. So then the question is, how do we partner and develop programs that can bring in those businesses without giving a shortcut? Businesses are not saying, give us a handout. They're saying, at least give us an opportunity to shake your hand. So we have to create practices and processes that invites them, but are equitable. There's a business case for diversity. I'm sure all of you in this room understand and know and are aware of all of the political onslaughts against DEI. And really, we're talking about money. The laws and some of the things that were passed here in the state of Texas actually were focused on minority business certifications. That is tied to contracts, which is tied to money. So you have to understand the people that you serve and speak their language to help them understand what's in the process. The processes are very confusing. They can be quite intimidating, and quite frankly, it can make people not want to do business. When you see a proposal and you have to turn in over 150 pages to show you are the right firm, there are a lot of businesses who don't have the wherewithal, the capacity, or the financial substance to develop and compete. And so when you understand the processes, you can make them, again, accessible. You can make them easy to understand, but that comes with outreach. So it's not good enough to be behind your desk. It's not good enough to just do a webinar. You need to be with the people you serve. You need to understand who they are and develop that relationship where they trust you. So for me, my philosophy is based on my life and what I've experienced, and more importantly, what I didn't see and what I didn't experience. And then the work is in building processes that are equitable, that reflect who we are today,
and that are accessible by people who look like me and all of us here in this room.
Thank you for that. Listen, and it showed up. It showed up in your department progress measures. And so many of you, if you are not familiar with the racial equity plan, there's a table out there with some QR codes that will take you to the entire racial equity plan. But just from high level, each one of our city departments, around 42 departments, have department progress measures that their specific department is overseeing. One of those progress measures, Danielle, for your department is to increase training and outreach to small minority and nonprofits to increase business diversity. We understand that that's key for so many reasons, as you just mentioned, but also you play a pivotal role with the other key departments to move this work forward. Can you share some specific examples from your department on practices that you've implemented to increase opportunities for minority-owned businesses?
Absolutely. So I will keep this short and kind of hit the high level. The number one priority that facilitates outreach, again, is information. And so our office produces a procurement quarterly report. Every single quarter, in advance of the upcoming quarter, we publish every single procurement that will take place at the City of Dallas. We're talking small purchases, we're talking billion-dollar projects at the convention center. The reason why that's important is information is key. So when you can tell firms, hey, this project is coming, this is the scope, this is the opportunities for MWBE participation, which is Minority Women Business Enterprise participation, you give them the opportunity to plan and to prepare. So the procurement quarterly is a national best practice for procurement, but especially in the DEI space. Another thing is meet and greets. So people do business with people they know. And so in order to get in that circle, you need to know some people. So our department facilitates meet and greets, which is basically a firm saying, hey, I want to come and learn more about the city. We listen to the pitch, we learn who they are, we give them tips, we give them technical assistance. And then if they have a service or a good that our city is needing or may need, we help facilitate the introduction. So it is not a rare circumstance that somebody, one of my peers will get an email, hey, this firm has this good, you may need it. That doesn't guarantee a contract. It doesn't guarantee that we'll ever use your service, but it guarantees you get to meet a leader. And a lot of times that opportunity isn't there. And then debriefs. So let's say you bid on a project, on a proposal, and you don't get it. That's okay. We give you the opportunity to meet with the people who evaluated your proposal, and we tell you your strength, your weaknesses, your opportunities. That is rare, and that's an opportunity that should be provided for every procurement, every purchasing department. We have a right to tell the people who were not successful how to be successful. If you care about your supply chain, if you care about the businesses that you do business with, you give them the opportunity to be great by showing them where they have some weaknesses. So those are a few things that are extremely important to me, as well as our master class. The Office of Procurement Services does a 6-month series of classes. We go into everything. I personally do a class on terms and conditions. It's 21 pages of things that could change your life forever on a good side or a bad side. I walk through those things that are in there. We talk about construction, how to get paid, how to stay in compliance. So those are 4 things that I'm proud to have brought to the city and hope that they are lifelong and sustaining.
System changes, right? And I heard someone in the audience say yes to the debrief. And so those are some key practices that you can bring back to your jurisdiction to have conversations around how we can create access when we're talking about our small and minority-owned businesses. Martine.
Hey, Doc.
Hey. So this is my sibling department. We both report to the same assistant city manager. And so just first want to share my appreciation for always showing up, all of you, but for my sibling department for showing up and showing out. Upon your arrival, right? And so you've been with the city for how many months now?
18 months.
You counting it, the days, the hours, the Wednesdays, the Thursdays, the holidays. But immediately under your leadership, we've seen the Office of Arts and Culture really operationalize the work of equity throughout various bodies of your work. Are you able to highlight for us a few components that all offices of arts and culture should be considering and practicing as it regards to equity?
Of course. So I mentioned the Dallas Cultural Plan earlier. It's baked into our work as a policy that our city council passed in 2018. Unlike some other municipalities, our office has oversight of around 20 cultural facilities. We have a fairly, what I call generous budget as it relates to the type of resources and financial support we grant out to artists and cultural arts organizations. And then thirdly, I saw that y'all have a self-guided public art tour, but we also have oversight of roughly 460 pieces of public art across the city of Dallas. So in those three buckets, of course, we're charged to operationalize equity. And as the first and main priority of 6 noted in our Dallas Cultural Plan, we have to look at each of those three buckets and see historically where the office has missed the mark and set some really intentional strategies and initiatives to ensure that we are moving the needle in that vein. So as it relates to what other offices should be doing, I would tout that they should follow our lead. No shame, they should. And I know I have some staff here, I want to shout out the staff. It's about having folks who are passionate about prioritizing equity first on the staff side of the fence, who can galvanize and encourage stakeholders, because you inherit stakeholders who are used to a thing. That might be they're used to having a certain level of support from the city, and moving the needle and prioritizing equity. The city's charged with shifting some of the ways those resources are allocated. So again, having a staff that is versed enough to look to the stakeholders and encourage them to go ahead and get on a ride with us is really significant and has been significant. And also being clear about the fact that we are going to align and support with folks who are in alignment with the way that we choose to support our cultural arts ecosystem. So as it relates to cultural venues, again, I mentioned we have oversight of 20 cultural facilities. I hope you'll visit. I see Rafa's here, Oak Cliff Cultural Center, Dallas Museum of Art, Bath House Cultural Center, Juanita Craft. I don't know if we can GARE folks had a visit and a field trip, but Juanita Craft Civil Rights House and Museum in South Dallas, and a range of others. But as we look at space as an example, we want to ensure that the artists and creatives in our ecosystem have equitable access to space so that they can do the work they do in the spaces that they need to have access to continue to contribute to the fabric of our cultural arts ecosystem. So that's one thing. Secondly, as it relates to the way that we are giving financial support, as an example, to artists, individual artists or arts organizations, is prioritizing minority-led organizations, artists who may identify as having a certain ethnic background or having a disability, as another example, and just shifting that each fiscal year, being a bit more aggressive about the percentage of folks who fall in those buckets, ensuring that that percentage of folks increases from year to year. Then as it relates to our public art collection, in a direct line with our Department of Progress measures noted in the racial equity plan, we are charged with ensuring that art spaces are safe places, essentially. So if you engage in the public at one of our public art installation sites, as it relates to our racial equity plan, we want to use those spaces and elevate them to acknowledge some of those dark moments in Dallas's past, where you may have a history of racial violence, and turn that space into a safe space of reflection, where we may be acknowledging lives lost due to racial violence, but also creating a space to educate residents and visitors so that they can learn about the strides the city's making to be a more welcoming, inclusive, and safe space for folks. So we do a lot of work, and so I tell people a lot of cities have a way of slapping murals in underpasses and thinking that's the charge, making the city cute. Doing a little sidewalk paint or revitalizing an old basketball court with the horizontal mural, and that's really not the work that a municipality should be highlighting as the thing. We're supposed to improve quality of life by way of one, making sure that the folks who are a part of the creative economy have what they need to continue to work and live and have a sustainable life as creators, and then separately look at ways we can partner and collaborate with other departments to do what we say we're going to do. Improve the quality of life.
And just sticking there for one moment on improving quality of life and recognizing one of your guiding principles is trauma-informed arts, right? I got that right, right? One of your guiding principles is trauma-informed arts. Talk to us about the alignment between trauma-informed arts and racial equity.
Okay, so my background is in the trauma-informed care sector and integrating the arts in that sector as a non-clinical form of therapeutic healing. So when you bring that forward to the work that our office is doing on behalf of the city of Dallas, and looking at what we want to do to improve racial equity as noted in our plan, first we look at our historically disadvantaged communities and those community members, and acknowledge the fact that these aren't the folks who need the mural painted on the wall in their neighborhood. These are folks who are in need and well deserving of wraparound services, support with housing, access to support to elevate themselves and their economic status, and many times, of course, health care and access to health care, addressing, again, those areas where they've been disadvantaged for decades. So how do we fit in that gap as the Office of Arts and Culture? Well, as my peers have mentioned, there's a lot of research and data that supports the fact that the arts are an avenue to healing trauma. One of the initiatives we'll be launching later in the calendar year is an Arts on a Prescription pilot, where you're a provider, and this is specific to our historically disadvantaged communities and equity priority areas. Folks in those communities can go to their provider and be prescribed a series of arts experiences that will, one, be targeted at improving gaps in mental wellness care, because here in Texas we do have a gap in the number of providers available, and so we're looking to the arts sector to fill some of those gaps in partnership with Blue Cross Blue Shield Texas and GARE Skywhite. Secondly, we're looking at the housing element, right? So if you want to, as an artist or an arts organization, apply for grant funding from our office, you have to have a zip code here in the city of Dallas. You can't be up in Richardson or New Orleans. You got to be of the city of Dallas. And if you can't afford to live in the city of Dallas, as the cost of living increases, of course, that's going to impact your eligibility. And so we're looking at some of our neighboring property management firms. Of course, if you've been driving around from the airport to the hotel, you'll know many high-rise buildings going up and many apartment complexes under construction. We want to see those developers commit a percentage of their units to the creators in the city of Dallas so that they can have subsidized living expense and also access to the spaces in those properties that are kind of non-traditional, the room with the pool table in it, or the empty working space where, if you live in the apartment, you can go down there and work. We want to use and elevate those spaces so that the artists have somewhere to work and somewhere to exhibit while they're living there at that lower cost of living. Again, to support their need to be here in the city so that they can continue to on our office to support their need. So those are just two examples of what I mean when I say we want to address the hardship that folks have endured, and we want to make an impact to improve those.
Thank you for that, Martina. We're inviting the audience to really, if you have any questions, we're going to open it up pretty soon to audience questions. But before we do that, as you all are listening to the department leaders talk about the work that they're advancing in their specific departments, I do think it's critical to recognize that the city of Dallas has been on this journey for quite some time, right? And so we started with really normalizing the work by doing things like bringing Undesign the Red Line to City Hall, or you probably remember that piece of it. You were a Equity Core team member when we were really active with Equity Core teams. And Ms. Beverly Davis, I think I seen in the audience, in your way, you were critical to leading that charge, right? Where we, within City Hall, openly discussed the ways in which housing segregated communities and the disinvestments that had happened in the communities, which is critical as planners and as other city staff are walking through the hallways. Right. The Office of Equity and Inclusion took the charge of really normalizing the ways in which we think and talk about data that's broken down by race and ethnicity. It's one thing to say that we are offering services to everyone. It's another thing for us to actually pull the data to say who is not receiving the services at the same threshold, right? We challenge departments, right? Through the Budgeting for Equity tool, which I can tell you the first year we rolled that out, departments were like, hey, what is this? And this is your lane, and why are we doing this, right? But we've seen a complete 180 when we're talking about not only how are you benefiting, but most importantly, how are you burdening communities? Because again, as a city, it's easy for us to say we do all of these amazing things, but it's the actual systems that need to be changed where we're actually being harmful to communities. And so really challenging thought leaders to think about, wow, okay, wait a minute, let me think about how I'm allocating my resources and how this may be perpetuating inequities that already exist. Right? Thinking about community engagement beyond some of just the traditional ways in which we have done them, and think about how we have language access available. One of the first things that the City of Dallas did in 2019 was release an equity indicators report. And that report highlighted 60 measures across 5 different themes: economic opportunity, justice and government, public health, infrastructure and neighborhoods, and education. Who knows my quiz this morning? I got them all 5. All 5. And we got quite a bit of questions, right? Because jurisdictions don't oversee education, but it's key to the work that we need to do here in the City of Dallas. And that report hit us with the hard truth, right? Now, it was no different from what we heard from communities as they reported experiences, but now we have the data to really align our services with. And so I want to open the floor to just ask the panel to talk about that process as the city was normalizing this work before we got to a racial equity plan.
Sure, so I can start with that one. When it first came out, I did have that reaction for a minute, because we are a revenue generator, right? We're one of the departments that's an economic engine. And so we sat back as a staff, we got into a room, and we started to ask the questions, because we were doing some of the work, but we didn't know how to really align it with the indicators, right? And so we broke them down, and we made some promises in the first one, and we've kept them. We worked with other departments, we worked with the city. We said we were going to increase the way and our interactions, our engagement, and our policy processes as a center to engage more MWBE firms. We did that. We said we were going to open up opportunities for education and access in different ways. So we partnered with Dallas College, we partnered with UNT Dallas. We went out and started talking to all the high schools and junior highs about careers in tourism and hospitality. And from that, we birthed an internship program. We talked about trades, because everybody is not going to go to college. It's not for everyone. And so that's where we started really opening our relationship to the regional Black contractors, Hispanic contractors, etc., and finding ways for people to get into trade programs that could lead to jobs that pay well above living wage for HVAC and all of those things. And then turning the building around so we can turn it back to South Dallas. So looking from the physical to operationalizing to looking at all of the systemic things that have led to where we were, it's amazing. So I thank you for the challenge.
Anybody else?
I'll jump in real quick. So the first year, it sort of gave us an understanding and confirmed some of the things that we thought were happening in neighborhoods, gave us a really good data set. Since then, we've been able to take that assessment tool and understand it and marry it with other market conditions that really drove our process to understand where we should focus our efforts in the city. So we looked at the places that were historically disadvantaged, as well as the areas that have market conditions that are changing pretty quickly. So these are the areas that we need to focus on from a housing equity standpoint. And now we've introduced a policy amendment to our housing policy that's only a year old, saying that we're going to dedicate 50% of all of our budget in housing across all sources to those target areas. So it just takes it to the next step.
Thank you. And what are the target areas? Let's talk about the target areas.
Sure. So the target areas, or equity strategy target areas, are the areas that we've identified primarily in the southern sector that allow us to say a lot of our housing activity has already taken place here, but there has been those neighborhoods that have been redlined. There is all the issues of not enough infrastructure to support new housing development. There is deteriorating housing conditions. There is market pressure from investors. And if we don't have acts right now to preserve affordable housing and get more affordable housing on the ground, 10 years from now, the market's going to run rampant, it's going to be gentrified, and a lot of people are going to be displaced. So a lot of people will challenge us saying we have too much affordable housing now, we're ready for the market. But when we see that happen across the country, neighborhood by neighborhood are being lost. So we have to have activity on ground over the next 10 years to have any chance to prevent displacement. And that's part of what we're doing with the target areas.
Well, I was just going to add for the budgeting for equity. So essentially, it's a tool that the Office of Equity and Inclusion requires each department to connect our dollars to, again, our racial equity goals and plans. So for the Office of Procurement Services, I was actually excited and a little bit shocked. And the reason why I say shocked is because it is very hard and very challenging for those of us who work in public service or in the nonprofit space to see an organization take a total shift to say your money matters and we're going to follow the dollars of your values. So our previous city manager, T.C. Broadnax, our interim city manager, Kimberly Beiser-Tolbert, there's a very clear and deliberate focus on equity. So when you connect your goals, your performance to your money, as directors, we have a responsibility to budget and be fiscally responsible. What this tool did was it highlighted, here's the money that you have, but what are you doing with it, and who are you doing things for with it. So I think for procurement, it gave us the opportunity to increase some of our department roles. So we have some positions that were administrative, we were able to elevate them to have our racial equity performance built into positions. So we're not just saying we're going to do outreach, we're going to do X, Y, Z. We actually have a position and a role that's tied to our outcomes. So it applies structure, but accountability. So I would get the chance to say, I forgot to do outreach in South Dallas, or I forgot to do outreach for our Asian or Hispanic or Black community, because it's tied to the work that I do and the money that I get. So thank you for leading the charge and for challenging a lot of people, because when you talk about money, people get very, very concerned and alert, but it is very significant for you to tell us what our focus is, which is, again, a reiteration of our leadership.
Thank you. Well, thank you all. I'll say many of us recognize in our jurisdictions, people want to see outcomes, right? And so it's like, okay, we now have a chief equity officer. What are you doing? Show us how you have changed something. And so I think it's important for us to take that moment and remember that equity is both a process and an outcome. right? And the process piece is just as important, if not more important than the outcome, because the process piece is how we actually change the system. And so the outcome is not based on any one of us, but it's now based on the new system that's put into place. And so the first few years of the budgeting for equity process, it was just that, a process. How are we thinking about disaggregated data? Is it okay for us to truly amplify where we're seeing some of the inequities, right? And so we're excited as an office now to be in our 5th year and to hear from departments. We were intentional around one of our questions, asking departments, has it been an impact? And so we can also tell that story. And we were excited to hear that over 36% of our departments said that they have strategically allocated their resources in a different way. Right? 28% said that they now have changed their practices for inclusive community engagement. So that can be everything from language accessibility to asking the community how we should be allocating our individual budgets to making sure that we're hitting communities in different ways than we have historically done. Instead of asking them to come to us, we go to them. And so I think all of you, I want to pass the mic to Kevin to see if there is any audience questions that we have while we have the panel.
Good morning. My name is Ali Yoon, and I've been working for Dallas County for 4 years. It's really amazing to hear the city of Dallas and different departments they work together for racial justice and equity. I find myself constantly learning about different levels of government and how they work together. What I was curious about is what are some historical ways the county and the cities have worked together to target racial equity and justice? And what are some areas where you can see that we can maybe work better on?
So I can do one. We partnered with the county in our internship program, for example, on the trade side, to look at how we can increase accessibility in the tourism and hospitality space. We've got 77,000 hotel rooms, right? So a ton of hotels, a ton of opportunity for repair and maintenance. We've also partnered with the county and Dallas Community College on food and beverage and helping to hire as interns some of the people that are going through some of the programs, and with justice impacted individuals. We require now that our contractors that come in as subs through our management agreement at the convention center, that a certain percentage of the jobs be allocated to justice impacted individuals. And so we work with some of the county programs and their partners to look at who is work ready, and we do that. So it's been great. We're actually this year, when we do our next budgeting for equity, we'll talk about the percentages of people that have actually completed the programs and started in actual workspaces.
If I can just acknowledge Jason in the back there, our Chief Equity Officer from Dallas County. So the Office of Equity and Inclusion and Jason's office have really been convening to think critically about how we continue to leverage the work that we each do for greater impact. This evening you'll hear from Jerry Hawkins, our keynote speaker, and he highlighted that Dallas is one of few cities that has a racial equity office in our independent school district. We have it at the city level, and we have it at the Dallas level. And so speaking to GARE's framework about the importance of organizing around this work, being able to leverage each other and our bodies of work to really think critically and intentionally about the advancement of this work.
Looks like we have time for one more.
I'm fangirl off of Dallas, and so thank you all for being here. I'm hailing from New Orleans, and so our office is pretty new in that we haven't gotten the traction that we have wanted, and I want to shift that, and so that's the goal. I have a couple questions, but I'm gonna go with one. For procurement, I'm so impressed with the goals and the initiatives initiatives. We also have our Office of Supplier Diversity, and a lot of what you were saying feels like it's their lane, but it feels like it's more effective in procurement. And so I'm just wondering if you all have an Office of Supplier Diversity, and if you don't, how do I leverage what feels like one lane, but would probably be effective in another lane? You know, speak to that maybe a little bit, if I'm making sense. Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you for that question, because it is really a hot topic right now. And again, when we look at the political landscape, it's MWBE, small businesses, certification versus business processes. So at the City of Dallas, the Small Business Center is the department that actually manages our minority women business enterprise and other programs with entrepreneurship. The Office of Procurement Services, we actually are quite literally married at the hip. Our processes, our evaluations, our scores, our scoring of proposals and bids, our outreach, we do them in partnership. And here's why that is absolutely critical. It is ineffective to tell people to get certified, to do business with you, to come and learn about us, but not give them the access and the resources to actually do it. So the small business, the DEI space can sometimes go into, and some organizations put it in a very small corner. Talk about diversity, talk about equity, and stay there. What the City of Dallas is very intentional about is we're going to talk about it, but we're also going to show you how to do it. So what that looks like for us is, as peer directors, we communicate, we partner, and quite literally, we make sure that we're both at the table with a lot of these conversations that are happening. We make sure that our staff work in tandem with our processes. And then again, in the face of the community, we are together as one. Now, we may fight like family members behind closed doors, but when we get out in public, we are taking care of business, which is serving our community. So how do we do that? The leadership has to be in alignment with the center goal of we're going to do X, Y, Z. Once you get leadership invested in a unified foundational focus, and then you show that to your staff, and then you put processes to back it up and to sustain it. So it's easy, it can be easy to do, but it takes, again, very deliberate work from leadership, and I'm highlighting that because everybody's a leader in their space, whether you have a title or not. So the onus is upon you to step out to say, hey, this is a need, this is something I see, it needs to be fixed, and then do it.
All right, you know we can go on for hours. I know my GARE team, I see Lenore in the back, she's giving me the clear. But I want to take a moment and really just give each of you 30 to 60 seconds to highlight whatever it is. You have a room full of practitioners trying to continue to advance this work in this moment, in the South. And so, want you to just leave us with some words of wisdom.
I'll kick it off. First, thanks for letting me be in this room with you all. I feel privileged to learn from all of you on the stage. It's always fun to come away as sharing some of the things I do, but also learning from each of you. So thank you for that for me this morning. In terms of housing work, it's hard to shift from just delivering services to thinking about who you serve. It starts with conversations. It starts with people that might look like me, trying to have those conversations to say, who are we serving and what are we doing, and how are we all part of these communities, how are we building neighborhoods together, and it's really about listening to each other, having conversations, and being open to continual learning. So thank you all.
I will second what Thor said. I'm learning so much, and especially for arts and culture. The art on prescription, or I mean, that's mind blowing. There's such a need to bring those resources. So what I would say is representation matters, and what that means is you matter. So whatever community, region, background, religion, sexual preference, belief, faith, wherever you come from and whoever you are, there is extreme significance in your voice and in your presence. So don't dim your light, don't water yourself down, do not silence yourself when these conversations are taking place, when there's action that needs to happen, do it. And do it afraid if you have to, but make sure that you understand how important you are, and you build that into everything you do, because again, there's people who you may not know who need to see you, who need to hear you, but more importantly, they need to be able to see the work that you're doing and take that and continue the work. So representation matters, which means you matter.
Okay, well, so much to think about. 30 seconds anyway. Those of us who work on behalf of a municipality can get really laser focused on one thing or another. And I find here on behalf of the Office of Arts and Culture, as we are prioritizing equity, racial equity, I want folks to give thought to the neighborhood impact of the work that we're doing. Our presence is citywide, and I myself can lose sight of that for one reason or another. But our city, the fabric of it is between neighborhoods. And as we look at our historically disadvantaged communities and the others, just want to be thoughtful and considerate about the neighborhood impact of the work we're charged to do.
I would say this, don't work in a silo. You have to hear, you have to understand, and more importantly, you have to listen in order to solve a problem. And I think that that's where what we started to do once the equity indicators came out and the budgeting for equity came out, we started to listen to each other. And I think once we did that and we combined resources and we combined knowledge, that's when we were able to make the most impact. So wherever you are, you're not alone. You're at your seat for a reason. And when you're at that table, it's your job to bring other people to the table who can actually keep the work going and keep pushing it forward. And words at the state like DEI, etc., they're just that until you put them into action and you put some processes and things behind it in a meaningful, substantial way.
Well, thank you again to the panel. One of my personal slogans is equity is everyone's work, and this is clearly an indication, again, of the approach that the city of Dallas has taken to advance equity. It would be a missed opportunity not to highlight our former city manager, T.C. Broadnex, and the ways in which he was very intentional around his leadership team, and not just from a representation, right, as it regards to gender and all of the other multiple identities that we hold, but also our commitment to equity and inclusion. And our current acting city manager, who has highlighted 3 C's: connection, communication, and collaboration. And so, to all of my partners on this panel, again, I appreciate your time, and I want to leave you with something that I heard that I'm still chewing on, and I think we all should be chewing on, from our keynote speaker last night. He reminded us that people with power does not outweigh the power of people. And so as we continue to think about the importance of community engagement, let that resonate. Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage GARE Program Manager Jared.
Hey everybody, can you hear me?
Should be good, yeah.
Can you hear me? Okay, great. First of